Yeah, this is why if you have a girl in heat, you do not let your boys out with them. They can't even help themselves. I was hoping Bandit would do what he was doing last night. He was just sitting there humping the air. Dirty dog. Alright, backyard, boys. Backyard, let's go. Backyard, let's go. Good morning, Buster. What you doing, buddy? Buster. Hey, Bo. Ellie? What are we gonna do today? I think we need to start going over, in the book of Maccabees, it talked about Hanukkah, or it wasn't called Hanukkah then. Feast of Gathering, I think they called it in there. Or I'm going to find that in the Sefer and go over those scriptures with you. So stay tuned for that. Hey guys, welcome back to another Tapestry of Truth. Today we're going to be going over Hanukkah 2020. I am not a Jew, however, I do feel like I am a seed of Abraham, at least I hope I am. And I did take a Nazirite vow, so I am a Nazirite until death, because there is no temple. You can find out about Nazirites more in the book of Leviticus. You've heard of Samson, Samuel. Even the Apostle Paul took a Nazirite vow. Let's go over Hanukkah 2020. I've talked a lot on my channel about God's holy days. He doesn't have holidays, he has holy days. And, while this isn't one that is listed directly in the Bible as Hanukkah, it is still one of God's holy days by what I can find. And I'm going to show you information today in the book of John, and also in the book of 1st Maccabees. So we're going to go to John 10 and 1st Maccabees chapter 4 today. The holy day will start Thursday evening, December 10th at sundown, and it goes until sundown Friday, December 18th. The word Hanukkah means dedication and is celebrated each year as the Feast of Dedication or the Festival of Lights. Jesus, or Yeshua, made sure he was in Jerusalem during Hanukkah, the Feast of Dedication, in John chapter 10. And we're going to go there to read that directly from the Bible today. The Feast of Dedication, today Hanukkah, once also called Feast of the Maccabees, was a Jewish festival observed for 8 days from the 25th of Kislev, usually in December, but occasionally late November, due to the lunar solar calendar. Today I'm going to be using the Eth Sefer. In it we're going to go to John chapter 10, and we're also going to take a look at 1st Maccabees chapter 4. I'm not going to be reading those whole chapters, I'm just going to be using some of the verses. So I do recommend that you go read on your own the entire chapter in context. John chapter 10, we're going to read verses 22 through 24 specifically. Again, I recommend you read the whole chapter on your own. It says, "Now it was the feast of dedication in Jerusalem, and it was winter. And Jesus walked in the temple in Solomon's porch. Then the Jews surrounded him and said to him, 'How long do you keep us in doubt? If you are the Christ, tell us plainly.'" So we see there that Yeshua himself walked into the temple on the Feast of Dedication. You know, Yeshua was a Hebrew. He grew up as a Jew or a Hebrew. He followed all of God's commandments and feast days. It tells us all throughout the Bible to follow God's commandments. And if we look in, I believe, the book of Exodus, and I'll pop the scripture up, it tells us that God's seal are keeping his commandments and his feast days holy. Now let's turn to 1 Maccabees chapter 4, and this is going to explain where the Feast of Maccabees, or the Feast of Dedication, where it originated or was brought back to and rededicated. The purification of the temple. Judas and his brothers said, "Now that our enemies have been defeated, let's go to Jerusalem to purify the temple and rededicate it." So the whole army was assembled and went up to Mount Zion. There they found the temple abandoned, the altar profaned, the gates burned down, the courtyards grown up in a forest of weeds, and the priests' rooms torn down. In their sorrow, they tore their clothes, cried loudly, threw ashes on their heads, and fell face down on the ground. When the signal was given on the trumpets, everyone cried out to the Lord. Then Judas ordered some of his soldiers to attack the men in the fort, while he purified the temple. He chose some priests who were qualified and who were devoted to the law. They purified the temple and took the stones that had been defiled and put them in an unclean place. They discussed what should be done with the altar of burnt offerings, which has been desecrated by the Gentiles, and decided to tear it down, so that it would not stand there as a monument to their shame. So they tore down the altar, and put the stones in a suitable place on the temple hill, where they were to be kept until a prophet should appear and decide what to do with them. Then they took uncut stones, as the law of Moses required, and built a new altar like the old one. They repaired the temple, inside and out, and dedicated its courtyards. They made new utensils for worship, and brought the lampstand, the altar of incense, and the table for the bread into the temple. They burned incense on the altar and lit the lamps on the lampstand, and there was light in the temple. They placed the loaves of bread on the table, hung the curtains, and completed all the work. The 25th day of the 9th month, the month of Kislev, in the year 148, was the anniversary of the day the Gentiles had desecrated the altar. On that day, a sacrifice was offered on the new altar in accordance with the law of Moses. The new altar was dedicated, and the hymns were sung to the accompaniment of harps, lutes, and cymbals. All the people bowed down with their faces to the ground and worshipped and praised the Lord for giving them victory. For 8 days they celebrated the rededication of the altar. With great joy they brought burnt offerings and offered fellowship offerings and thank offerings. They decorated the front of the temple with gold crowns and shields, rebuilt the gates and the priests' rooms, and put doors on them. Now that the Jews had removed the shame which the Gentiles had brought, they held a great celebration. Then Judas, his brothers, and the entire community of Israel decreed that the rededication of the altar should be celebrated with a festival of joy and gladness at the same time each year, beginning on the 25th of the month of Kislev and lasting for 8 days. Then they built high walls and strong towers around Mount Zion, so that the Gentiles could not come in and trample and defile it again. Judas placed a detachment of soldiers there to guard the temple. He also fortified the town of Bethzur, so that the people of Israel would have a fortress facing Idumea.